The Provoke Podcast, brought to you by Provoke Media and produced by the international broadcast specialist Marketeers.
Hello and welcome to the Provoke Media Podcast. I'm Diana Marzalek. I am with Provoke Media. We have with us today Patrick O'Neill, Managing Partner at Sherlock Communications, live from Rio. So welcome, Patrick.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Good. I wonder if you could give us a little bit of information, a feel about Sherlock's, because it's so pertinent to our conversation that we're going to be having. So for those people who, I don't know how they might not know about it, but if they don't know about it.
Be crazy. Okay, for those one or two people in the world that haven't heard of us, we are a public relations and communications agency that was founded around 2015 to 2016. We were founded in Brazil by two gringos, as they say here, so myself and my business partner, Alistair, with a focus on helping international companies enter into the market or grow in the market. We decided, particularly I decided, because my Portuguese is very bad, that I would play a useful role being the conduit between international clients and Brazilian media. And then I would leave the Brazilian agencies to get on what they do best. And I would work in this area and develop a niche, and we developed a niche in this area. We started in Brazil, as I said, and now we've grown organically to cover nearly all of Latin America. We have people in nearly every country. We have offices in Santiago, Buenos Aires, Mexico City, Bogota, and Lima. And then we have what we call satellite offices in the other countries. There's only two countries that we don't cover, basically, in Latin America and the Caribbean. That's Cuba and Venezuela.
Interesting. That's I didn't realize that. Which kind of brings us to our point. So we're going to talk about your report and what the larger issue of what we're calling bad language, right? And you mentioned your Portuguese, sort of the anomaly in Latin America to have a Portuguese-speaking country. Tell us a little bit about the report, and I'd love to discuss how the issue of language and companies moving into Latin America, it's so nuanced, and it sounds like, based on what you found, a lot of companies are not doing their homework.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing for me, or what started my wish to do a report into this, is the number of people who approached us. And I'm not talking about small companies in North America or Europe who didn't really, large brands coming to us and saying things like, oh, we've translated into Spanish so that should be okay. And I'm going, actually, no, in Brazil, they speak Portuguese. And I actually said to one big brand in the last month, okay, if you agreed to do the same kind of campaigns in the US, in French, and then I'll understand, I'll try and do this in Spanish in Brazil. And he actually said to me, that would be ridiculous. And I went, yes, but it's the same here. People in the US would not appreciate a campaign in French and probably would not respond to it. Again, people in Brazil would not likely respond to a campaign in Spanish.
Well, they wouldn't understand it unless you're trained, educated in Spanish. It's a different language.
It boggles my mind sometimes, and particularly with the development of AI, the number of people who think now that's going to be a solution for everything, and particularly when it comes to translation. And I'm not trying to be a Luddite, saying I hate progress, I hate technology. I love technology. I think AI is going to be play a really important part in us developing our offerings to our clients. I think it's really, really cool. However, a company that spends often tens of millions of dollars developing a product or service and then is mean about the final thing of translating into a language their target audience speak, to me, is ridiculous.
Well, it is. But what is it? Is it an arrogance, or is it a lack of knowledge? What is it? Who? I always think we should have a column of who does that? Why would they do that?
I think it's an arrogance of English language speakers, to be honest. Native English language speakers. I consider myself one of them. Yep. And there is a laziness in going, oh, they should speak English, or they should speak whatever. We speak English and whatever. And I think that's primarily one of the things, and because it is a dominant language international. We're an agency that deals with companies, our clients in China, our clients in the US, everyone speaks English, okay? But that's within our business. We have to understand the audiences we're trying to speak to.
Right.
If you're doing an online ad and you've done an AI translation and not checked on it, it damages your reputation, damages the sales figures that you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
I promise not to use lots of results in the sense of the survey. People can read
But
that by going.
this one, I like the results because this one will.
Yeah,
I'm selfish.
but
I like this one.
I think the report highlights that, there's 300 million online shoppers in Latin America, okay? 77% of them have told us they have stopped making a purchase. So they've because of language issues, and that can be the website, it can be the ad that they've seen. There's a number, but they feel offended. And I think rightly so. If you don't care enough to actually make your communications in the language of the person you're trying to sell, it shows you have a bit of contempt for them. And you're not being sensible. And your competitor who has done the language report will probably beat you.
It really is. It's really kind of patronizing. It's pretty. But when you talk about the size of these companies, it's amazing. And it's not just so, as your report found and you and I have discussed, it's not just Spanish versus Portuguese. It's the nuances within the Spanish-speaking countries.
100%. And if you think of it, because I'm originally from Ireland, so I speak a certain version of English, and then someone in the US will speak, or Canada will speak a different version of English. But okay, it's English. But there's certain words that we would not use that in the US or the Canada people will use, and there's certain words I don't even understand because there are these little words, and it's not everything. Even the way that we spell the word labor. Where I come from, it's LABOUR.
Right.
And in the US, LABOR. For me, when I see if someone's trying to sell me something and they've misspelled it, in my opinion, which is without the U, I get a bit. Oh, this isn't targeted at me. That this is something that's targeted at someone else. And I'm sure North Americans feel the same way if the opposite happens. And I think it's just understanding. Okay, most of Latin American countries speak Spanish, but if you're the Spanish in Argentina is slightly different from the Spanish in Mexico. Right. And within countries, there's, in Brazil, there's 220 million people in Brazil. Sometimes you have to make sure that, obviously working out that slight words are not used in all the states properly because you develop slang or whatever, and it's not a bad thing. But all we suggest is that you go to and make sure that people have someone who is aware of these differences, has a look at what you've produced, and make sure that it reaches as many people as possible. Or even, I must admit, before I came to Latin America, I didn't understand the number of people who speak indigenous languages here.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other, yeah.
Exactly. This is, there's certain things I think in Peru, there's four or five official languages. In Paraguay, there's two. And Guarani is an indigenous language that's considered to be, it's an official language. And so all we're saying to people, have a look, do your research before you try and do communications here. Don't think if you're sitting in an office in Paris or an office in Washington and doing an AI that you're reaching people around the world. You're not. And the likelihood is you're going to upset them and you're going to offend them, or at the very least, they're just not going to buy you.
It's not only, you mentioned arrogance, or we talked about that, but it's not only that, but it's kind of ignorance, right? I mean, I'm surprised. I'm surprised when you talk about these big companies. I mean, Latin America is huge, on the map doesn't do it justice, right? So just to think of Latin America, even us just talking about Latin America, I mean, if we talk about North America, we're still talking about Mexico and the United States and Canada, different languages. So it's, people seem very behind based on this. Companies seem somewhat behind in doing their due diligence, being educated on what's going on down there. I mean, you're a lot of people in Latin America.
I mean, there's an historic thing from, I'm not sure I need to mention, but a large car manufacturer in the US that used a term of a brand of their car that is the equivalent of Brazilian male genitalia. It was a very unpopular car in the US, but using that word in Brazil was not appropriate and no man was going to buy it, okay?
Yeah.
And then recently we had a case of someone who was a client, they came to us during an issue, is a kind of a competitor to Twitter from India, which their name is Who. which is KOO. But unfortunately, in Portuguese, when you say that, it's the same word as, or slang maybe for an anus. Okay. Now, when they launched it, they didn't realize. They came to us when there was a big scandal and everything. But then within 48 hours, they'd had over 1 million downloads of the app because Brazilians had a sense of humor as well.
Right,
And they
right.
thought it was funny. So there's things that, again, it's not that you want to turn into Mr. or Mrs. Po-Face about it or Professor Linguist. There is a point where do your research, find out firstly what language the client they was trying to target. You know, they do all this work and it's, you know, middle-class people or ABC, you know, all these ways of looking at people's status and whatever. And people haven't done the work on the language is just shocking. And I think...
I'm sorry, go on. Please go on.
I think in our world in public relations and communications, it also, you know, the number of people who use, you know, these translations they've done, and public relations agencies will do translations online and then send out a press release to a journalist in a publication here where it's bad. That, you know, that journalist will never, and if they've any sense, they'll block the email address that it's come from, but it's really offensive. And if you're a company that, you know, you're looking for a journalist, the longer term impact of that can be enormous.
So it's both in media relations and in community or consumer relations.
100%. And I think this is another thing that becomes, there's a presumption then that all the journalists will speak fluent English. And to be fair, many journalists that we arrange interviews with, we check about their level of English, because many will say they speak English and maybe not the level that if you want to talk about cybersecurity that's going to work or medical research. So they will have basic. So we double check on that. We make sure, you know, we'll look and see what support that the client and the journalists need, and then we bring the two of them together. But it is really important for agencies as well. And those who think that they can just send out a press release, you know, the same press release, and it's translated on some of the wire services now automatically, and it's pretty shocking, some of the quality of it.
Now, so I'm picturing this coming from the US or Europe or whatever, these companies. What about within Latin America? So would an Argentinian company target, I don't know, a Colombian company, a Brazilian company? Is there intracontinental issues too in the PR world?
Well, the big trans Latin American companies, the big brands that do lots of consumer campaigns and campaigns like that, will generally, in my experience, are more aware of this. In the same way that I was aware when I was based in the UK and I was doing communications, international communications to North America, or etc., I would be aware of the spellings in particular. And maybe some words realizing that they're not appropriate, or it's not going to resonate with the audience. And in Latin America, people tend to be a lot more aware, particularly on the marketing side. It tends not to be as big as a problem. And because you can, you know, even in Brazil, because Brazil, obviously people speak Portuguese, but there's a difference between Brazilian Portuguese and Portuguese from Portugal.
Right.
And a Brazilian reader can tell in seconds that this is not targeted to them. It's just a reproduction of something from they were doing in a campaign, or they haven't realized it's a different version, a slightly different version of Portuguese. And that tends to be international. Tends to be countries outside Latin America. Obviously, it's not. It's important, but I think it is about, to me, a message about understanding who you're trying to speak to, understand what your brand is trying to say, or the company that you're working is trying to say, and make sure that the same amount of effort that you put into working out who are the audience you're trying to reach, that you do that and actually understand firstly what language they speak.
So would you say that this is indicative, I mean, we're talking language, but is this indicative of a bigger problem that companies are having marketing to Latin America? Not that they're not having a problem, they are a problem. But this take on it, is this just one aspect of a bigger?
Seriously, I think it is indicative. Often you have the number of people that say to me, "Oh, we're going to launch our product in Argentina." And I went, "Oh, great. Have you done some research to understand?" And then they go, "No, but it's already number one in France." And I'm like, "Okay, I don't really get the distinction. Have you done research?" And they go, "No." And I'm like, "Let's do some research." I'm serious. We had I can say, a company based in Boston, the US,
Mhm.
and they had amazing technology. They're going to launch a digital wallet in Brazil, helping poor people use technology
Oh.
banking services.
Mhm.
And they came to me and go, look, it's really great. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Have you asked anyone here if they want it? And then they went, what do you mean? And then what they actually said to me, our owner is Brazilian. And I went,
What's
okay,
their owners, what? They're,
Brazilian.
oh my
So
God.
he knows. And I was like, okay, where
Rich, educated Brazilian, not the people who may
exactly
not have a phone or
living
service.
in one of the most expensive towns in Florida. He is not the target audience for this product. But
Right.
in the end, we did some research, we did focus groups, we work out the basic technology that people liked, but they didn't like minimum payments. They didn't actually believe us at first.
Really?
And to be fair to them, they came down and we did another research focus group. We did some whatever, and with their engineers. And one of their engineers said to these people in the focus group, well, you have no product like this that we can understand the confusion. No product like this exists in Brazil. And this kid from Avella, probably 19, goes, yes, there is. He goes, on my phone, I've got 3 of them. And this guy was going, no. And he went, there's 3 on my phone now. Okay. But in the end, we developed one of the things, they reduced the minimum payment
Mm-hmm.
and allowed on it transaction payments. And that, because of this research, and it made them really successful. Eventually, they were turned into a bank. So they became very successful. But it was, and in the end, they listened to the people, not to us. They listened to the people who they're targeting, and it helped tailor their product, and they became really successful.
Which is great because some of it is kind of cringy what you're telling us. Some of these early interactions, right?
Oh, definitely. But I have to say, until I go to this, I don't know. I can make a presumption that a community is going to embrace a digital wallet. I'm thinking they won't. But actually, during the focus group, I suddenly learned, firstly, the knowledge that people had that you don't expect from some of the most traditionally excluded communities in the country. And then you realize there's huge knowledge here. But there also awareness. I mean, one of them said, because the minimum payment was something like $10, which doesn't sound a lot. But for a Brazilian on the pay, where the minimum wage is $1,000 or so, this is huge. And they all went, I don't trust this. Who are these people? I'm going to give them my $10. No.
Right.
And that kind of thing, I think I learned as well. And to be fair, one of the things as a public relations person, comms person, that when I was in Europe, I would never get involved in many things. And then I came to Brazil and I do a campaign for another client. And then we got massive coverage for them. They got massive hits from their website. They were selling tickets and they didn't sell one ticket. And I went, that's impossible. That's impossible.
Right.
And then we looked into it more. They looked into it. And this is 6 months after we launched. They had a huge number of visits, no one buying the ticket. Then we worked out their payment system could not accept Brazilian cards. So the worst thing ever was that we were getting the clients to them, and the clients we know would never go back to them.
Yeah.
Okay, they just won't go back because they've gone through and it's been a pain. They put in the whatever. So now, as a communications company, my team will ask questions that I would never, if I was a communication company in London, ask anyone.
Wow.
Because our job is not just to try and get you coverage, is to work out if the product is going to be fit with the audience we're trying to reach from you. So the research goes not just necessarily about language, needs to go in other things. And you get surprised when people say, well, we accept MasterCard and Visa. But they're different services. It's not going to fix, or in Brazil, there's a huge payment system here that's become hugely popular called PIX, which is amazing. And a system that you can pay for lots of things. It's free to use, and it's hugely popular. Many of the clients internationally, and maybe I shouldn't expect them, but they don't have a clue what this is. And that's our job we have to bring in. And I don't expect them to know that. I do expect them to know the language the country speaks.
Absolutely. I'm thinking about regions. Asia, I don't know that they have this issue with the changes in, I don't know, or Africa, I imagine, is not getting the attention that it could with that diverse languages and all too. And I'm just wondering why LATAM, considering the massive population and the growth over time and sophisticated populations, why it's just not getting the attention or it deserves.
I think the thing is that we've noticed that as a company, and I've noticed with my bad experience with language and my bad pronunciation, I realize that this is an issue, and speaking to clients over the past 8 years, that this is an issue. So I just wanted to highlight one of the things that I try and do is any of the insight reports that we do as a company, it's about trying to promote the countries that we operate in, because I live here because I love living here, but also to share insights on the things that there are many areas that Latin America leads on in the world. In Brazil, aeronautics, in Brazil, agri-tech, and people get payments that I just mentioned are world beating. And people don't think that. They think of sunny beaches, people in bikinis or whatever,
Right.
and sandy whatever. And it's more than that. It's that, but 100,000 things as well. And I think that's one of the things that I see our role as a communications agency here is to try and highlight these things and to help people who work with us also to actually come to and realize that there is huge potential here. Brazil is the 8th biggest economy in the world. And if you're trying to be an international company and are not looking at it as a potential market, you're missing out.
Absolutely. And I know Brazil has been through so many political ups and downs lately and economic as well, but how have you seen the market evolve? Is it matured in terms of a marketing or a commercial destination since you've been there?
I think in some ways it's marketing within Brazil is a world beater. They have some of the best advertising, marketing people that you'd probably meet in the world. They're world class and lots of stuff. And that has maintained itself. If you look at Cannes and the awards their campaigns generally get, they do really well. I think what we worked out is good for us, and that's what I probably should concentrate, is that we do see lots of newer tech-based companies want to come into the market, seeing there's a huge potential, because there are issues around trade with physical goods. There are, the whole things that can be complicated. With software companies, with companies that are more around tech, it's easier to do business in Brazil and Latin America. And I think that's what we've seen, a huge growth in the tech area. But it's not the only area, but it is one of the key things. Tech companies coming here, whether it's in cybersecurity, whether it's on dating apps, whether it's all of these things, there are huge changes in that way. And there's a lot of people open to deal with international clients or international companies that are trying to offer them stuff. And I think there's a lot more internationalization when it comes to buying things, looking at things than there have been in the past, and not just a trainer or, etc. There are people who are really interested, particularly around ed tech and education technology. People want to learn languages, they want to do stuff, and modern tech has allowed that to happen.
Yeah, it must be such an interesting time and place for you. Thank you.
No problem. Ciao, ciao.
Okay, talk to you. Bye.
You've been listening to the Provoke podcast, brought to you by Provoke Media and produced by the international broadcast specialist Marketeers.